Howdy everyone, my name is Dan and I am a pretty big fan of gadgets. Today we're going to be looking at two phones and I'm going to be comparing them. They are the Redmi Note 6 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy S8. Okay, so the reason I'm comparing these two phones is because I am sick and tired of spending $1,000, £1,000 on a new phone like every 2 years. And I think a lot of other people are realizing this as well, that the newest iPhone or the newest Samsung isn't really worth that much money. I mean, a lot of people will disagree and they want to, but I think there is a market there for cheaper phones. So yeah, I've had the Redmi Note 6 Pro for about a month now and it's become my main phone. And then before that, I was using the Samsung Galaxy S8, which I'd had for about a year. Now the S8 isn't the newest Samsung phone, so now it is cheaper. The cheapest I found it is around about $450, so it's a lot cheaper than the newest version. Now the Redmi Note 6 Pro is the cheapest I found this is just under $200, which is ridiculously cheap. Now I'm going to compare these two and see which one I think is better, whether this way cheaper phone can actually outmatch this phone. And I'm just going to determine whether the Redmi Note 6 Pro, which is fairly new, can still be an upgrade to a 1.5-year old phone. So let's start off with some basic specifications for both phones. Let's start first with the Redmi Note 6 Pro. It's got a 6.26-inch LCD screen. It's got a screen resolution of 1080 by 2280. The pixels per inch is 403. It's got two front-facing cameras, one's 20 megapixels and one is 2 megapixels. And then it's got another two rear-facing cameras, one of which is 12 megapixels and one of which is 5 megapixels. So all in all, it's got 4 cameras. The processor it uses is the Snapdragon 636. Is 8.2 millimeters thick and it costs, like I say, around about $220 depending on where you buy it. I will post links in the description where I found the cheapest version. Okay, so onto the Samsung. It has a 5.8-inch screen with a resolution of 1440 by 2960. It's got a pixels per inch of 570. It's got one front-facing 8-megapixel camera and one rear-facing 12-megapixel camera. Runs on Snapdragon 835. It's got a fingerprint sensor, proximity sensor, accelerometer, and an iris scanner, so you can unlock your phone using your eyes. It's 8 millimeters thick and it costs around about $450 or around about £400, again, depending where you buy. So just looking at those specs, it's kind of going Samsung's way. It certainly seems, just from looking at those specs, that the Samsung is the superior device. I mean, it's got a higher resolution screen, 4K, can display 4K on this screen. It's got a higher pixels per inch, I mean significantly higher, over 100 more per inch. First glance, it would seem it has a faster processor. It also has a USB-C port, whereas the Redmi Note 6 Pro just has the standard USB. This is also completely waterproof, so you can take it underwater, you can take it in the shower, drop it in water and it'll be fine. However, all is not as it seems, as I'm going to explain to you right now. So obviously, the Redmi Note 6 Pro is a Note phone, so it's obviously big. It's supposed to be big. It's more reminiscent of the Samsung Note range in size. The Samsung, on the other hand, has a smaller phone. I guess it's more comfortable to hold. It's easier to hold. It's got a screen that curves all the way around, so there's no bezel, there's no border, and it looks really good. I've not really found much use for the side controls, but it looks good that the screen is basically edge to edge. So the Redmi Note 6 Pro doesn't have that edge to edge screen. It's kind of got quite thick borders, especially at the bottom, which I feel like is a bit of a waste of space. This big black bar here. It's also got this notch at the top, which is a fairly modern feature. It's usually found on like iPhones and stuff, but this is where the cameras are placed. So I mean, makes it look modern, it makes it look new. Certainly, just regardless of the price, it definitely looks like a modern phone. Neither phones have manual buttons on the screen, so there's no like home button, that's just on the touch screen, and both have just the basic volume buttons and power buttons at the side. Now, looking at the screen of these two phones, if we take a closer look, it is pretty clear when you get very close up that the Samsung is a higher quality. It's not as pixelated, and yeah, you can definitely see a slightly more sharpness. However, in day-to-day life, in reality, you're never going to be looking at your phone like this close, so it won't really make much difference. I think the colors and the sharpness of the Oh, hello. We'll just wait there. No worries. Bye. Okay. Just a little phone call, doing a bit of business. Okay, where was I? Before I was rudely interrupted. So basically, to summarize, I actually prefer the design of the Redmi Note 6 Pro, basically because of its screen, of the size of its screen. I just prefer a bigger screen. I've always found the Samsung S8 to be a bit too oblong. It seems to just be too long and not very wide. The screen is obviously better quality on the Samsung. However, I mean, I don't even have it set to the highest quality screen, like the full HD, because it drains the battery so fast. So I actually set it to a lower quality, and then it's really not that much different on a day-to-day basis. So let's move on to the cameras, because it's an important part of having a smartphone these days. Everyone uses the cameras a lot, and this is where the Redmi actually really shines. And the Redmi, basically, spoiler, the Redmi Note 6 Pro is better for photography than the Samsung Galaxy S8. Now, this is for several reasons. Firstly, it's got not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 cameras, which I think is amazing for a phone that costs under $200. Or under £200. It's just ridiculous. And the cameras are actually really good. Front cameras shoot 20 megapixels and 2 megapixels. Basically, it's a selfie camera. It shoots extremely clear selfies, very big, very large, very sharp, because 20 megapixels is a lot. And this 2 megapixel camera that it has at the front allows you to reframe or refocus the background, so you can make your face in focus and blur the background, which I guess is good for selfies. Now, the Samsung, the front-facing cameras are awful. It just is so much less sharp, so much less colourful. Yeah, I mean, it pales in significance to the Redmi Note's front-facing cameras. The rear-facing cameras is pretty much the same story. Now, the Samsung does better with the rear-facing cameras. It uses 12 megapixel camera, 12 megapixel lens, and yeah, it does actually work really well. I've always enjoyed shooting with the Samsung. It can create some really good photos. I mean, I went out and shot in a very autumnal, sunsetty setting, and yeah, it can shoot very deep colors, very accurate to what is actually in reality, and quite sharp as well. I'm happy with the Samsung's rear cameras. However, there is just one, whereas the Redmi Note 6 Pro, again, has 2 rear-facing cameras, which does kind of bump up the quality. I have found that the Redmi does tend to make everything a bit more deep, a bit more saturated than it actually is in reality. Really good at macro photography, so zooming right into something, zooming like very close to a specific point and shooting photos like that. That's awesome. It's awesome at that. And yeah, I'm just super impressed with the cameras on this thing. For such a cheap phone, it's ridiculous. You also have full manual control, so you can set manual settings, ISO, exposure, shutter speed, all of that. So if you are really into photography and you want a cheap phone with a good camera, I mean, you can't really get much better than this, I think. Ooh, I'm on the camera now. Let's take a selfie. For photography, the Redmi wins for me, hands down, hands down. Video, on the other hand, is a different story. The Samsung, spoiler alert again, wins completely when it comes to video. It can shoot 4K video, it can shoot slow motion, it's got so many settings, so many options. The video looks really good. However, the Redmi Note 6 Pro is limited to just HD video. That's it. Can't shoot 4K, which is really disappointing because almost all phones can shoot 4K now. If you're just going to be shooting videos of your mates doing stupid stuff, and you know, of your cats doing a handstand or whatever, then it's going to be fine. But for anything more serious, the Samsung is much better for video. Now let's move on to the performance of these phones. So how well do they run? How responsive are they? How well do they play games? What games can they play? Are they fast? Are they smooth? Blah, 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 blah. Now, this all comes down to basically the processor and how much RAM a phone has got. RAM? Yeah, I said that, didn't I? So both these phones can pretty much run every game on the App Store. I mean, I've used both to play PUBG, Fortnite, Forza, no, not Forza, Need for Speed, that's the one. And these are quite graphically intense games, so if it can play those, it can play pretty much anything. However, the Samsung will allow you to have a higher quality experience just because the screen is better and the processor is better. It uses a Snapdragon 835, which is faster than the Snapdragon 636 of the Redmi. However, the difference is not that much between them. This processor in this phone is a lot older. This is a newer processor. It's designed to be fast and cheap, and that's what it is. Both of these phones have 4 GB of RAM, so that's pretty good for multitasking. In fact, I found the Redmi Note 6 Pro to be better at multitasking, better at running apps, many apps at the same time. And to be honest, I found the Redmi to be smoother, a smoother experience, just in general of opening apps, in scrolling speed. Now, part of that may be because this is a year-old phone. I've obviously been using it a lot, and it's, you know, they get slower as they get older, and this is a newer phone. However, I think part of the reason is because there is a lot more bloatware and a lot more just useless software on the Samsung, whereas this comes with quite a clean version of Android, which doesn't bog down the operating system or the processor. Now let's take a look at some of the unique features of both these phones, because they do have some. For example, the Samsung is waterproof, and the Redmi Note is not. Do not put it near water. It will die. However, the Samsung is, so you can wash it and you can take it in the shower if you want to. I don't know why you would, or just have it in the water and you don't have to worry too much. Unless you break it, which it is very easy to break. As you can see, I have broken it a lot. So now my Samsung is not waterproof. If you crack the screen in the slightest little crack anywhere, it's no longer waterproof. The Samsung also has NFC, which I find really useful. I do use it a lot, and I have missed it when I now use this phone. It doesn't have NFC, and it's a shame because it's the one feature that I really do miss in the Samsung. So NFC, big downer for me that this does not have NFC. However, it does have an IR blaster, which I just want to shoot it at you. Allows you to remote control things, like I can use it on my TV to change channels. You can also use it to control other devices like I think even a Hoover, a light. There's a whole list of things that you can control with the IR blaster. Now, another key thing, which is like an issue for a lot of people, is battery life. And I will say that the Redmi has a much better battery life than the Samsung. Again, this is older, so that could explain it, but even the day I got this phone, charged it full, it did not last me a full day. It lasts around about 18, 19 hours at best if I'm using it. Average to like slightly higher than average use. This lasts me a day and a half, and that's still not great, but it's a significant improvement. It's got 4000 mAh battery rather than 3000 mAh of the Samsung. So guys, I guess that's it. This has been my comparison between the Redmi Note 6 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy S8. And I think you can tell, if you've watched all this video to the end, you can tell that I am preferring the Redmi Note 6 Pro, mostly because of its price, because it's so ridiculously cheap. If this was the same price as the Samsung, then yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. I would say the Samsung is better. But this is half the price. This is $200, $250 max. This is $450. The only thing I miss is the NFC, the contactless payment. Otherwise, I consider this to be an upgrade from my Samsung, and I have no desire to get the Samsung S10 or whatever whenever it comes out. So yeah, if you are looking for a cheap phone, a good value phone, and you were thinking about getting an older Samsung, but then you had a look at these kind of Chinese Xiaomi phones, and you're wondering if they're actually any good, if they can compete, yes, this is just as good as the Samsung S8. It's much cheaper, and I would recommend this over this any day, because why bother spending twice as much? So yeah guys, if you are interested in purchasing either of these phones, or you want to have a closer look, you can check my website where I've done a full written comparison, so you can check out some photos and videos and a bit more information about both. You can see that in the description, and you can also find links to where I found both these phones at the cheapest price I can. I kind of have a look around to see where basically what the prices are, and I find the cheapest one. So yeah, check that in the description below. If you like this video, if you like my channel and you like gadgets, then feel free to subscribe. I have got another cheap smartphone coming up, the Poco phone, which is a slightly more powerful Xiaomi phone. It's more powerful than this, slightly more expensive. So if you were looking for a more powerful phone, but you didn't want to spend a lot of money, then this could be for you as well. So check that out. Stay tuned for that. Yeah, I'll see you around. Hope this has been useful. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Bye.